Brittons Hill St. Michael is a sleepy residential and commercial community that mirrors other districts across Barbados. It boasts 3 schools along its main artery, Brittons Cross Road, as well as a consulate and a number of food and retail businesses. But there is one thing that sets it apart from other communities: the events of August 26, 2007.
Around 4:30 this morning, while thousands of Barbadians were asleep, something was going dreadfully wrong in this quiet Brittons Hill neighborhood. Many awoke to a fierce rumbling. What they initially thought was a slight tremor was the partial collapse of their apartment building. Some managed to escape, others did not.
A family of 5, Donovan Codrington, his wife Cassandra, and their children, Shaquanda, Shaquille, and Yashiro, died when their apartment building collapsed into a cave at Arch Cot Terrace, Brittons Cross Road. The incident took its toll on residents and businesses in the area. Arch Cot, and by extension the Greater Brittons Hill community, became an area for the rest of Barbados to avoid. Those who remain, however, have a different perspective.
People, they just don't know, they just hear things and they don't know, and they tell a lot of lies. A lot of lies were told on Arch Cot and this whole area. People that just probably
don't know.
Went in Brittons Hill, they don't know, it's a lot of lies. Arch Cot was a basic accident that should have not happened, but Brittons Hill and this whole area is safe, and I will live here for another 58 years as long as I'm living. It is safe.
Me, I have no fears out here. I have no fears, absolutely no fears. One time, people were scared to come across Brittons Cross Road. Out here like it had the plague. Now, every morning out here there's be back up the traffic from one end to the next, all through the gaps, even through here.
The government did, I suppose, a lot because they had a lot at stake. They had St. Paul's, they had St. Cyprian's, they had a lot of schools out here. And of course the rumors were saying the whole area was a problem. So they carried out extensive electrical testing, and they also bored holes to test the depth of the rock, to see how far down the rock went. Because as the geologists had explained, if it's over a certain depth, then there's no danger of the houses collapsing, of it collapsing inwards. So I was always comfortable, and actually I always wanted to get back in my house from day one. It turned out that we were out a little over a year, and a lot of it had to do with all the utilities were down. Every day up to now, people that know me, "You still live out there?" I would move the day after. I don't know what you do to allay fears. I think a lot of Bajans like to be frightened for things. And so there's some people that more practical or pragmatic, and okay, so it's done. But like I say, 10 years later, you still get people telling me how fearful they would be to be out here, and how stupid it was for me to still be living here. So I can only tell them, no, I feel safe.
The cave-in forever changed the landscape of the area, and the conversation on how building and development in the area is approached. Following the incident, all tongue planning applications in Brittons Hill require geotechnical studies or investigations before approval is given.
Arch Cot was a major disaster, and as the agency charged with the responsibility for land use management, the town planning department obviously had to respond. Fortunately, the government of the day had put a consulting team in place of private sector individuals, and then there was a steering committee of public sector officials. That steering committee was chaired by the Chief Technical Officer from the Ministry of Transport and Works, and the Chief Town Planner also sat on that committee. The final committee report, that played a significant role in helping the Town Planning Department, because out of that report, there was some mapping, and we were able to put policies in place to guide the development of the Arch Cot area, which is bounded on the north by Kalmarock all the way up to Valerie, that would be more so your northeast. The eastern ribbon goes along Reese Road, where until it abuts that would be the Brittons Hill Road, and then it comes all the way back to the High Cliff, or the area where the incident occurred. So that's the zone which has been mapped, and what we refer to that for our day-to-day planning purposes as the Arch Cot incident zone.
In spite of the 2007 tragedy, the Town and Country Development Planning Office has received a number of applications for development in Brittons Hill.
We are still getting applications for that particular area. As a matter of fact, I think since the incident, we've had probably 50 plus applications, primarily for residential development, but in some instances for change of use. As you know, that Arch Cot area or the Brittons Hill area is a very heavily built out area. You don't have many vacant lots in there. So most of the applications we have seen so far would have been for renovations to houses, and in the odd case, erection of a residence and then change of use of a residence. But we have seen continued submission of planning applications. We also, from our planning control and planning enforcement, we monitor it, I would say, quite vigilantly to ensure that persons are not carrying out development which requires planning permission. Now, one of the critical things required that we've put in place since the collapse, we have requested geotechnical studies, and this was a direct recommendation coming out of that study done by the consultants with oversight by the steering committee chaired by the Chief Technical Officer in the Ministry of Transport and Works. So when an application is submitted, we would normally ask the applicants to submit a geotechnical study, and that geotechnical study would then provide valuable information in terms of the load-bearing capacity of the soil, in terms of the proposed development to be undertaken. So that is one major and significant change that has been put in place since the incident occurred at Arch Cot.
All right, we are about to run the GPR. Now, this device in my hand, this is the monitor, and the information is relayed from the receiver and the transmitter to here. So as Jade pulls the device, it would read out here on the monitor.
The highly qualified geologists at the Natural Resources Department in the Division of Energy and Telecommunications are tasked with reviewing geotechnical investigations done by private companies, including those done in Arch Cot.
Following that unfortunate incident, we were contacted by the Town Planning Department, Town and Country Development Planning Office, to assist them with evaluating and assessing applications to develop land within the Brittons Hill, the greater Brittons Hill area, not just in Arch Cot. Our role really is to assist them with evaluating and assessing the applications. They have instituted a requirement where potential developers are required to submit a geotechnical report to complement or to supplement the application to develop the land. And those reports would be necessary to provide information on the lithology of the area, the rocks, whether there are any water courses traversing the area, to investigate the subsurface to determine the strength and stability of the foundation that they want to build, the strength of the rocks that are below the surface, the nature of the rocks below the surface, whether they're intact, whether they're consolidated. And so that was one main requirement that has come out of the work that we are doing with the Town Planning Department. Geologists use geotechnical investigations as a tool to try to gain more information about the subsurface. So geotechnical investigations come in various forms. Predominantly what the purpose of them is basically to get information on the subsurface to determine the physical properties of the rocks that exist at the surface and below the subsurface. This is critical for development, particularly people trying to develop land for housing, tourism, commercial purposes, construct bridges, construct various structures that need to have a strong foundation. So geotechnical investigations would consist of things such as geological field traverses. So you do site visits, you do investigations, visual inspections of the rocks, the soil within the proposed area of development. There are also other techniques that can be used, for example, boreholes. Boreholes are an invasive technique that you use to investigate the nature of the rocks or the soil at a particular location. These boreholes or subsurface borings are critical, are useful for gaining some information about the rocks and the soil at a particular location.
Outside of invasive techniques like boreholes or excavation, there are also non-invasive ways of conducting geotechnical investigations.
Those non-invasive techniques can include ground-penetrating radar. The division actually has in its possession ground-penetrating radar equipment that we use to survey various sites for caves and voids and other types of features that may pose a threat to development. There's also electrical resistivity, and that is another non-invasive technique that is used to investigate the subsurface via the use of electrical currents and running those through the ground to test the properties of the subsurface. There are a few other methods that are used as well, including microgravity, and those are some of the main techniques that geologists and geoscientists use to investigate the subsurface. Once a developer recognizes that they want to do some construction, whether it be a new structure or renovations to an existing structure, or whether it be for commercial purposes or whatnot, within the Greater Brittons Hill area, they would have to satisfy certain conditions, which would be to submit a geotechnical report along with the application. We would come in where the report would be forwarded to our department to review, and we would assess the report for a number of critical factors. One, the geology of the area predominantly is limestone, so we recognize that that is one of the main things that we look for. And in terms of the nature of the geology, did the report discover any areas of weakness, any areas of potential instability? Did you find any caves? Did you find any sinkholes? Any structures, any features that could compromise the stability of overlying structures? We also look at whether the drainage in the area, whether there are any surface streams or the issues are related to surface drainage, whether there are any areas where water would pool, areas where water would flow on the surface, so that we ensure that there's no risk of flooding and no risk of constant karstification within the area or formation of voids or caves or holes or anything like that that would be a serious threat.
Retired Chief Geologist Leslie Barker was on the committee that conducted an inquiry into the disaster and made recommendations which were laid out in the Arch Cot final report.
The entire area was really not at risk. As you know, the St. Cyprian School is still there, and there are houses to the, I would say to the southeast of Arch Cot, which are still there. There's an apartment building to the front, which is still there. A number of those houses we identified as not being under threat of any collapse. So the recommendations to government was that a number of the houses could remain, and some should have been, the lot should have been abandoned and the houses razed.
Mr. Barker, who has conducted a number of geotechnical investigations in Brittons Hill for private individuals through its company Hydroterra Inc., addressed concerns about the geological integrity of Brittons Hill.
It is not like a pincushion, so every area is not going to be at risk of finding any cave or any cave collapse. Obviously, I would say, from as a rough guess, fissures, caves probably occupy less than 1% of the total area. So much of the area is still habitable. People still live in much of the area, but you will find caves in the Arch Cot area. Was a special area because it was a combination of an existing marine cave and a water course leading into this cave and further exaggerating the development of the cave. So that was a particular area. I'm not saying you might find also other caves in the limestone in the Brittons Hill area, but the entire area is really not one large piece of Swiss cheese, if you want to say that. Much of Brittons Hill area is still habitable. I would say even if you were over a cave and you had a thick enough cave roof with enough structural span, you wouldn't need to be too concerned, but you would need obviously to have work done to ensure that your location is satisfactory for this type of structure that you are building on it.
Ten years after the cave-in, Brittons Hill is once again a thriving community and the preferred location for a number of businesses. Larry Ware, owner of Larry's Old Fashioned Bakery in Lanes Road, Brittons Hill, experienced a fall-off in customers after the cave-in, but 10 years on, his business is picking back up.
The main customers will come through our cars that are going to St. John, Christchurch and St. Philip. We lost a lot of those customers, and it was a rather slow time, but as we go ahead, things went back to normal. I will invite everybody that used to come before and other people coming, because it's a good area. We make a whole set of different variety of bread, cassava corn, and turnovers, you know, and I would just love to see the people come back into the land so that they could get the goodies, okay, from Larry's Old Fashioned Bakery.
David Ben runs a small food business in Arch Cot. He lost most of his customers directly following the building collapse, but business these days is returning to normal. Britain's Crossroad District is home to 3 schools: St. Paul's Primary, St. Cyprian's Boys School, and Lockerbie College. None of the principals have any qualms about the school's location.
The only thing that has changed to my mind is the awareness. People have gone about as normal as they did before, and what we know now is exactly how many feet of rock we're on. That is something that we never knew before, something that we didn't think we had to know, but obviously because of what took place, that was brought to the fore.
The St. Cyprian's principal has the perfect response to persons who question the school's location.
Well, I asked, how many feet of rock is your house on? 99% of them say, well, I don't know. I said, but at least we do. Okay, so I know that we are safe. After the cave-in, and we said, well, we needed to move the school, and we moved for a year. We lost 12 students. And we were inundated with telephone calls, and people were saying, well, I heard about the cave-in, I believe you may have lost a few students. Do you have space for my son? And we lost 12, and we took in, I think, 21. Yes, I would say that it's testament to the confidence, not only in the structure of the area and the integrity of the area, but in the program of the school as well.
Julia Hanschel Chamberlain, principal of Lockerbie College, started the process of buying the property located at Brittons Cross Road back in 2006. Then the cave-in occurred the following year.
We were committed to Lockerbie, so the first conversation we had was with the old gentleman who we were buying it from. His name was Mr. Hunt, and he had lived here for a long time because his wife had actually been given Lockerbie as part of her sort of dowry kind of thing from her dad. So I said to Mr. Hunt, oh my gosh, this Arch Cot thing has happened. I mean, I can't put a school here and have dodgy foundations, you know. And he said, Mrs. Hanschel, this house has been standing since before 1790 because the walls are 2 feet thick. So we know it was built before 1790, and I can assure you that the foundations are solid. I said, well, I'm going to have geologicals done so that I can be absolutely certain. So I did. The guys, the firm who were actually called in to check out the whole Arch Cot area after that horrible tragedy, they were available, and an engineer put us on to them, and they came and they examined the entire site. And we had drill holes done every 18 inches or whatever the case was. And the report came back that we were absolutely solid, the entire site. So we went ahead, and in 2007 we did the renovations, which is the building you see now. And in 2008 we actually moved in, and the school sort of, it no longer was operating 1,200 square feet. It was now operating 5,000 square feet, but the school actually moved into this main building. And then in 2015, we applied to town planning and so on, and we built our geoscience block, which is the building over here. And then last year, we applied to town planning again to build a school gym and an outside taekwondo area and so on. And that's when Geologicals got involved again, because although we had this huge geological survey, which sort of labeled us as absolutely safe in 2007, the town planner, quite understandably, was very cautious. And he said that for this area over here, which is, you'll see an area designated for the gym, the town planner actually said you need to fulfill the criteria that the geologicals, the geological chief geologist of the island would have to come and examine the site, and you have to have more testing done. And that's a very small structure. It's just a little wooden structure, you know, with some solar panels and so on top. But understandably, he was very cautious. So while it was a bit of an inconvenience and a large expense, you totally understand why that had to be done. And be perfectly honest, the safety of human beings is more important than any payment that you have to pay.
St. Paul's Primary School principal, Sandra Small-Thompson, said it was business as usual at her school.
There was a thorough investigation. We were not here for 1 year. Quickly after, some teachers were quite ready to come back and start to work on the same site, but there were some parents that were not comfortable. So over time, we have seen the confidence growing back. We've had our numbers right back up there. We have children that would have left at that time, that the younger siblings are now coming back to the school. And that certainly would have been a testament to the work that the teachers here put in to getting the children, making them the best that they can be. The school has continued to make excellence its motto. Sometimes we have to refuse students from coming into the school because our numbers are so large. The teachers continue to perform amidst all very challenges that we have, not necessarily from Arch Cot, but other challenges. They continue to perform at a remarkable level. They are interested, they're keen about children, and that speaks for itself. Hence, you find a number of persons asked to come to St. Paul's.
The chief town planner pointed out that geotechnical investigations are not exclusive to Brittons Hill.
There are areas like Warrens and Cave Hill where we do ask for geotechnical studies, but again, not for dwelling house development. These are for multi-story buildings. Now, we recognize that Barbados, having primarily a karst limestone formation outside of the Scotland district, that caves are characteristic of that karst limestone formation. And in some instances, when persons are excavating as they prepare for construction and they find, I would say, unusual geological or geologic formations, they should get in contact with the Natural Resources Department. And I think this is something that collectively as regulatory agencies, ourselves, Natural Resources Department, and maybe one or two other agencies may have to put in place in terms of public awareness, because I think the builders are right at the core of the development process, and when they find unusual things, they should report.
The role of the Town and Country Development Planning Office has grown since 2007.
It has evolved significantly. As you recall, there was a coroner's inquest. In my opinion, the department was harshly blamed, because you have a building that was submitted to the Town Planning Department in 1981. Planning permission was granted, and mark you, the role of the Town Planning Department is to look after land use management. The Town Planning Department does not look after building regulations. And planning permission was granted for a subdivision, and then there was subsequently an application made for the erection of an apartment building. So that building would have been there for 26 years, approximately 26 years prior to the incident. But in hindsight, persons had a lot to say in terms of planning permission should not have been granted and other things. But we're not going to get very much further into that, because it's still a matter before that is sub judice. But we always take our responsibility very seriously. And what I can say is, since the study was prepared and presented to us, we have followed the recommendations in the studies as it relates to us. The Geographical Information System has helped us tremendously, because we can do precise plotting of all the applications submitted. We have followed the zone mapping with the incident zones, zones 1 through 4, 1 being the most restrictive, and that is around the High Cliff area. 4, it would be that area around Reese Road on your eastern boundary. But we still require the geotechnical submission. We have had resentment from a number of applicants for the submission of the geotechnical, because they speak to the cost of it. As you know, at the planning office, we don't have any control in terms of the cost of that. It is a precautionary measure, and we are following the recommendations. So we do not grant planning permission for any development within the Arch Cot incident zone which does not have the benefit of a geotechnical study. Now, the geotechnical study is the first step. When that geotechnical study is submitted, we send it on to the Natural Resources Department, where the government specialist geologists, they also look, they do I would say a peer review of the geotechnical that would have been submitted by the consultant whose services the applicant would have acquired. And based on their response to us, if they are in agreement with the findings of the applicant, usually the decision is a yes. If they are not, we give the consultant an opportunity to amend what deficiencies have been found by pointing out to them areas that they should areas that they should focus in. And if they take that into consideration, it is then resubmitted to the Natural Resources Department, and when the final okay is given, then we would finalize the application. But we do take that very, very, very seriously. So I would say we follow the recommendations coming out of the study to a T. Now, I must sing the praises of our GIS application, because this allows us to do very precise plotting, and also the praises of the officers who go into the field, because they're the ones who go out and then ensure that what is submitted on paper can work on the ground. So I think the vigilance and the due diligence has been good, and we will continue to work assiduously, not only for Arch Cot, but for the orderly and progressive development of Barbados.